we're only going to have a short time together here tonight with each of the instructors. This is your final class. We'll also give you a review sheet at the end of this hour so that you can prepare for my portion of your final exam, which will be next week. Next week are final exams. How many of you knew that? So everybody knows about it. How many of you are prepared for your final exams? No hands go up. Okay. Pardon? How many blocked it out? All right. I highly recommend you unblock it. Okay. So let's pray together, and then we'll just share some final thoughts. Father, thank you for our students and for all the hard work that's been poured into this semester, and we pray that it just will pay great dividends both now, next week, and more importantly in the future, as they kind of put their hands to the plow and begin to implement, even though some are already doing that, but in the future with the opportunity, perhaps some here in this classroom called to full-time ministry, others in some capacity involved in the work of the ministry. So use these classes and these many hours that they've spent in the classroom as preparation for your calling upon their lives. We thank you for what we've had a chance to consider together, and bless these final thoughts tonight. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Okay. I just want to wrap up tonight maybe with just this one thought, this one theme and idea, and that is perseverance. The importance of persevering in anything that we do with our lives is critically important, but I think so much more so in relationship to ministry. And some statistics have given the indication that as far as youth ministry work is concerned, you might find that the average youth worker hangs in there for about 3 years. And then they move on. Youth work and working with young people can be very challenging, to say the least. It seems like it's never ending, that's for certain. It can be almost every day of the week. There's always another student to visit, another counseling session to have, another event to plan, another lesson to prepare, another family to help, and so on and so forth. There's a lot that needs to be addressed, and if you have a growing youth ministry or a large youth ministry, that can place even greater demands upon you and even more pressure. But it can be done, and it not only can be done, but it can be done with real enthusiasm and with a real sense of longevity. You can be in it for the long haul. I think I think in a more official capacity began in 1983, and I don't know, I haven't done the math lately, but it's a lot of years. It's close to 30 years. So, you know, there are many, many examples and many, many testimonies of youth leaders, youth workers, youth pastors around the country, around the world that have stayed at it and done so very, very effectively. But I think you could almost suggest to those that are considering the possibility of entering into some kind of part-time or full-time youth ministry work that you probably have to implement somewhere along the line some survival techniques. That might be what it takes to be in it for the long haul. That might seem like a strong word, but I think it's appropriate when you're dealing with youth ministry and you're talking about persevering or finishing the race well, because there can be a lot of pressures, there can be a lot of demands placed upon your time. It can tax you both physically, emotionally, as well as spiritually, to be certain. I think a lot of youth leaders, youth workers start out, out of the gate very quickly, very strong, and then, of course, over time, you can begin to see how they can become quickly challenged. We've seen this throughout the years. I mean, obviously, some people, they get involved in youth ministry work because they feel that there's there's close proximity to the young people that they're ministering to. They themselves have just moved out of that youthful stage. They are young adults, and they feel as though they can really make a connection with young people. But sometimes that connection lasts for a while, but then they begin to, move into other realms of their lives and maybe even consider moving on. You'll notice that youth ministry work has a way of attracting leaders and volunteers, and it also has a way of losing leaders and volunteers. And on the one hand, it can attract them. On the other hand, it can lose them. It just can happen. And the turnover can be great. And if you're in particular in that position where you're responsible and, you're not a volunteer, but you're actually the youth leader or the youth pastor, well, then you're not going anywhere. You're staying put. You are in it for the long haul. And then the question is, how are you going to be able to stay in there and keep from burning out? Right? I mean, I think that there's a genuine kind of burning out, and then there's an illegitimate kind of burning out. I'm talking about the genuine kind, where people try to burn the candle at both ends, and they just, waste away. They become completely exhausted. Next thing you know, they have to check out of whatever ministry they're a part of. So often you hear people ask the question, if the people that they're asking the question to are involved in youth ministry, they say, are you keeping busy? Well, maybe a better question would be, are you keeping balanced? Because that is so essential in working with young people, to keep a balance in your life personally. You don't want an imbalanced ministry. You don't want an imbalanced kind of life. If you were to approach it from that perspective, you would find out that finishing strong is just a dream, and it's probably not going to be a reality. You have to guard your heart against becoming overly emotionally involved. And by the way, if we just backed up a little bit, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that since we taught our class on the abuse of young people and making certain that it doesn't happen in your youth ministry or in your sphere of influence involving youth ministry, isn't it amazing that since that class you've had the incidents that have taken place at Penn State University, and then you've also had what's taken place on the college campus of Syracuse University. In both instances, coaches involved in sexual assault with young boys. So that kind of illustrates the point and the serious nature. And of course, this has grabbed the attention of the entire country, needless to say. And we're still hearing about it almost on a daily basis. They're still talking about it almost on a daily basis. It's not going away, and it shouldn't go away until these issues are resolved and help can be brought to those who were the victims of that kind of abuse. But it is interesting. So I really want to encourage you to go over your notes and to look at what we covered in that particular realm of youth ministry work, because that is so vitally important. Don't think that it can't happen. I would suggest to you that if you're going to get involved in youth ministry work, the chances of it happening are dramatically increasing every year. More so now than ever before, you have to guard against abuse. And please keep in mind that in both instances, the people that were around the abusers knew them, trusted them, and were absolutely shocked and appalled that something like that could happen, and that their friends, so to speak, could actually carry out such crimes. So again, you might think, oh, thank God I know the people I work with. Well, we can all say that, we can all think that way, but maybe we don't. So, I mean, you really have to be on your toes, spiritually speaking. You have to be on your toes in terms of discernment. You've got to watch out for any telltale signs that might indicate that any kind of potential abuse is happening in or around the young people that you have been given responsibility to cover, to protect, to invest the life of Christ in. All right? So keeping from burning out, very, very important. Balance your life. You might have to, that might mean giving yourself a day off. You say, oh, no, I'm in the ministry. I work in the ministry. That's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You better give yourself some time where you can, again, have a little downtime put everything that you're doing in perspective. Maybe it's some time away with your family. If you overdo it, it's only going to come back to haunt you. It's only going to come back and be your Achilles heel. You've got to work those more important aspects of your life into your ministry work. And if you don't, you will certainly pay a price for it somewhere down the road. Here's another thing that I want us to think about as we kind of wrap up this class, this aspect of the class. Always remember the act your age principle. Okay? Act your age principle. And what I mean by that, it's not so much, well, maybe it is applicable to you and I. Maybe we always have to keep in mind that we should be acting our age. But I'm talking about the young people that we minister to. We have to remember that if we're working with adolescents, preteens, teenagers, young adults, 18, 19 years old, remember something. They are probably going to act their age sometimes. And that shouldn't blow us out of the water. That shouldn't, we can't look at a young person because they've shown some potential for spiritual growth. They've taken on some responsibilities. Maybe they have become the leader among their peers in the youth group. Maybe they become the leader among their peers in the Christian school or in the local high school, public school that they're a part of. Well, that's great. Praise God for that. But if they should at some point along the way do something completely stupid, something that would actually be age appropriate, we have to remember that they are not our age. Right? Here you are, you may be in your late 20s, your early 30s, even older than that, and, you're kind of working with teenagers, and you get a little frustrated because they're teenagers. But you got to remember that. Okay? Remember that they're 14 years old, 15 years old, and then maybe look back and reflect back on some of the absolutely idiotic and foolish things that you and I did when we were that age. Right? So, there's something to be said for that. Don't be too disappointed. I read a story about one young man. He was very, he was kind of like a leader in his youth group, and the youth leader was so proud of him, so grateful, so thankful, and he showed up sometime later. I guess around the first of the year, they had a New Year's Eve party, and he showed up and he was intoxicated. And, it was kind of a terrible scene. And the youth leader himself, he was completely devastated. It gave him some moments where he kind of sat back, reflected upon whether his investment in that young man's life was worth it. Where was the payoff, so to speak? And he really felt like, what a letdown. And that's not, he wasn't suggesting that, if your kids come, jumping into youth group and they're all drunk, that you're just like, oh, well, that's what they do. No. That's not the point. That wasn't his point. His point was this. 8 years later, he got a letter from that young man as he was graduating from divinity school, graduating from a Bible seminary, and then beginning to make plans and preparations to start his first church. 8 years later. You see, 8 years earlier on that New Year's Eve party evening, he thought, this kid he's going nowhere. I thought that he, had promise. I thought there was some hope for him. And then, of course, he looked at himself. He questioned himself, the effectiveness of his ministry, whether or not he had made a difference in that young man's life as well as all of the other young people that he had ministered to. Really began to doubt, call into question his ministry. And yet God said to him, through that letter, you see, you just cannot tell. You just never know. What youth ministry oftentimes amounts to is a work of faith. We are believing that God is doing something, even though we might not see the evidence immediately. We are believing that something is getting through to the young people, even though we can't necessarily see it. I reflect back on those days when some of the young adults in our ministry today were teenagers. And I got to tell you, I look back and I think, oh my gosh, they are just going down the tubes really fast. And one of those people was Pastor Barry Quirk over in, he is, pastoring the church over in Budapest, Hungary. Another one is Coach Lynch. I had written him off a long time ago. And he's come through. And, really, there's just so many that you can look at. But there were moments, trust me, and I'm not going to reveal what those moments were like. But there were moments, and sometimes long stretches and periods of time, when I looked at them, shook my head, and then I thought to myself, what a failure. We have accomplished nothing. And yet we have seen many young men and women go on and be used greatly by God. And just to know that whatever you did, whatever you might have invested in their young lives at the time, even on the basis of faith alone, never seeing any real evidence that what you had imparted or invested to them was making a difference, is a payoff. And God will make sure that you see that. But if they at times begin to act their age, just remember what their age is. And just don't think that, that ruins any and all ministry that you've had at that moment. All right? Here's another couple of quick things that we're going to cover before we wrap it up tonight. As far as your responsibility in youth work, in youth ministry work goes, don't feel like you have to be liked by everybody. Okay? Say it again. Don't have this idea that you have to be liked by everyone. And don't even feel the need to be liked by everyone. I think by nature, especially if you're in any kind of ministry work, chances are, you know what you have in terms of an emotional makeup, in terms of one of the aspects of your character? You know what it is? It's pleasing people. You want to be able to please people, right? You want people to be blessed by your ministry. You want people to be touched by your leadership. Everybody does. But we have to be careful that we don't cross the line. Because sometimes, by nature, people that involve themselves, especially in work with young people, they have this need. They're people pleasers. And it presents a big struggle for them because, yes, they want to, please the people. They want the young people to like them. They want the young people to respond to them. But sometimes when that happens and that becomes like the frame of reference, well, they got to like me. They got to like. Next thing you know, you're compromising. Next thing you know, you're cutting corners. Next thing you know that your youth ministry lacks conviction. Next thing you know, you're not sensing the power of God. Because your whole goal is not to please Christ. Is not that those young people would come to know Him, the God of the Bible. It's that you want to please them. And that can always be a problem. I'm not suggesting that your goal is to intentionally make people angry. That's not what I'm suggesting. In other words, be as mean and as rough around the edges as you possibly can be. And if people don't like it, tough, find another youth ministry. No, that won't win anybody. But I think we all know that, yes, we can be kind, we can be loving, we can be caring, we can be tender, we can be sweet, patient, all of those things. But at the same time, we don't compromise. We have to draw that line that God has shown us to draw in the sand. And we need to say, these are the boundaries in which we operate here in this youth ministry. And sometimes you're going to go home at night and you're not going to feel liked by everybody. Sometimes you're going to wonder if some of the young people even like you at all. But that's not why you're there. Remember that. You're there to minister. You're there to share the message of Christ with them. You're there to impart something of an eternal nature to their souls that will end up making a difference in their lives. It's not, it doesn't, you don't, at the end of the day, you don't stop and take stock and say, well, did they all like me? It doesn't really matter. I mean, it would be great to think that they did, but some of them might not. You might get some wonderful letters from some young people that say, oh, listen, thank you, and I can't tell you what you've meant to me and what your life has meant to me. And you get those letters, goodness gracious, keep them. Start a file if you have to. Put them away. Hold on to them. I do. I've got, like probably most of you, I've got a few Bibles. And I just take those little notes and letters and cards and I stick them in my Bible. They're everywhere in my Bibles. And every time I open a Bible, you know what I do? I just read it. Get a little built up. They're not 16, 17 anymore. They're probably 27, 30, 40. But when you read it, it's kind of funny. Sometimes I take it, I bring it back to them, show it to them, say, remember this? Remember when you used to like me? Show it to them. They get a chuckle out of it. They say, wow, I can't even believe I said those things. I said, neither can I. All right? So they don't have to like you, but in the end, if you do what God has called you to do, they will love you. And they will appreciate you, and they will thank God for you. Here's another thing that we can learn to do together. You should practice saying no. Because you're going to have to say it. Okay? Imagine if every youth leader said yes to everything. That means you and your youth ministry would all be imprisoned. Right? No question about it. You can't say yes to everything. So you've got to practice saying no. Because if you don't, you're going to try to do everything. And anybody that tries to do everything ends up doing nothing because there's nothing left to do. They have no energy. They have no strength. Emotionally, they're drained. Physically, they're drained. Spiritually, they're overcome. Be careful. You have to just say no. I mean, they say, listen, this is a great night for an all-night prayer meeting. And you've been going for the last 4 or 5 nights. You might have to say, you know what? An all-night prayer meeting is a great idea, and we're going to do it. I'm going to put it on the calendar. We're going to check out the best time to do it, but it's not going to be tonight. Okay? Because I haven't seen my family in 2 weeks, and my children, when I came into the house the other night, asked who I was. So you got to really guard your heart against that. Okay? So practice saying no. Here's another thing just to remember to jot down as we wrap it up. You're going to have to learn to confront people. Obviously, the young people, the students themselves, but not just the young people. Sometimes it's going to involve staff. Okay? My particular experience with this is that I don't like that so much, especially when it comes to staff. You like to think that all of your staff are completely like-minded, just like you. You'd like to think that your staff is mature and that they have a real handle on making good quality decisions involving the youth ministry and the youth group. That isn't always the case. Okay? Moses, when God called him up to the mountain to receive the law at Sinai, I think he probably thought, the children of Israel will be okay with Aaron. Boy, was he surprised when he came back down and Aaron had led the children of Israel in building the golden calf. That's great. Moses goes up to meet with God, and Aaron is at the foot of the mountain, and they're worshiping a cow. Didn't turn out so well at all. So you just don't know. You can't be absolutely certain. So the bottom line is you might have to, on occasion, confront some of your youth leaders, some of your staff members. It's not easy. And when it comes to confronting young people, you can do it very graciously. It doesn't have to be long and drawn out. But I would recommend that you just kind of approach them first by saying, listen, here's my premise. You don't have to say those words. But this is in your own heart. You're thinking, I love you. I care about you. And the truth is, I need to be honest with you about this, and then you can talk about it. But let them know that you care. It's kind of like disciplining children. And I know that some of you in this room don't have children. But, so you're wondering what in the world are we talking about. But, when you get to that place and your children are growing up and you have to implement discipline, well, you certainly want to do so with love. Okay? You never want to discipline apart from love. They need to know that they are loved. They need to know that their acceptance of you as a parent is never in jeopardy. They need to know that despite the fact that they're going to be disciplined and there are going to be some consequences involved with their behavior, your love for them doesn't stop. Your love for them doesn't fail. And they haven't done anything outside the realm of your, everlasting acceptance in their eyes. God forbid. But then again, there has to be discipline. So you do it with love, you do it with care, and, you might even say things like, this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you, which is really not the truth. But you might have to say that anyhow. So, again, learn to confront. It's probably going to be necessary. It's certainly going to be valuable. And in the end, it's going to be worthwhile. Okay? And then finally, and then we're going to open this up a little for discussion, keep communicating with your other youth workers. I know because of the demanding schedules, it is so difficult. Early on in youth ministry, I think we used to do it every couple of years or so. We used to have youth leaders seminars. And boy, they were helpful. Because we got to come together. We get to talk about some of the things that we're confronted with, the things that challenge us, the things that we're struggling with. And it was so beneficial. And we used to open it up to other ministries, and we would pick a neutral site. We'd try to go to some kind of a camp, or we'd try to go to a conference center and make it special, make it enjoyable. We'd have activities. We'd have lots of fun. We'd have some downtime, but then we'd have some meetings, and we'd have some sessions, and we'd talk about some of the things that we're facing as youth leaders. And boy, they were very, very productive. It seems like these days there are more demands upon our time and our schedules now than ever before, so that's become a little bit more difficult, although I still think that the need is there, and it probably should happen. But if you can't schedule a conference, if you can't get away to have that kind of a seminar, then by all means, come together and talk to your youth leaders. Find out how it's going. Maybe some of them are struggling with some things in their lives personally. Maybe it might even come down to the fact that some of them may have to step away from youth ministry for a period of time until they can kind of, get things together in their own life. I've found that this has been the case more often than not with a handful of youth leaders throughout the years, and I think it's good. I think it's good that we communicated. It's good that they came and they told. Sometimes they communicate things and you say, you know what, that's just a projection. That's not even real. Maybe you're identifying with some failure that happened to you and you feel unworthy and you feel like you're not in a position to serve young people. You forget about that. You isolate that. Come on. Join us and be a part of the team. Other instances, it may warrant them taking some time, kind of getting things together in their own lives personally. But keeping the channels of communication open with other youth leaders is absolutely imperative. And I highly recommend it. And for that to happen, you got to be talking, right? It's not like when you come together, it's like, all right, how's the plan? How many we got? Who's going to pick them up? Who's going to drop them off? I mean, sometimes it can be just like that. It's just the hurriedness of working with young people and transporting them from A to B and making sure that this happens and making sure that that happens and all of the things and all of the responsibilities, and yet sometimes, we're overlooking some of the students themselves, and we're overlooking some of the needs of our staff members themselves, and we can't afford to let that happen. And then the final thing I want to leave you with is this. I think it's important that you have accountable friendships outside of your ministry. Have accountable friendships outside of your youth ministry. In other words, if all you're doing with your free time is spending it with your other youth leader comrades, it would probably be healthy for you to develop other friendships outside of the ministry. There's nothing wrong with that. On my free time, my wife and I, we like to spend time with, other people that we know, other families, other couples. We go out, we have coffee, we fellowship. It's nice to talk to adults. It really is. It's a real break. They actually want to listen. Sometimes I start talking, they start listening. I'm just going, I catch myself. They're like, "What's wrong?" I said, "Well, you're listening to me." But, you need that. You need that personally for your own personal fellowship and edification. And maybe as you discuss some of the things that you're dealing with them, they might be able to help you out in some way. Might surprise you that kind of friendship and the accountability that you establish with other people that are not necessarily involved immediately in your ministry, right? I mean, they might not be working side by side with you, but they are brothers and sisters in Christ, and they can bring an objective perspective to what it is you're going through. And I think it's very, very helpful. So I highly recommend that, especially when working with young people. Okay? Now, any questions as we kind of wrap things up here in our first hour together? Any questions youth ministry related? This is going to be your last chance this semester anyhow. And as you do have a comment or a question, if you wouldn't mind just using this microphone, we'll get it turned on for you, and then state your comment or your question.
I thought of this before, but your last statement, especially if you're planting a church or you're in a very small church where basically you're wearing all the hats, how do you do a lot of these things? I mean, if you're, having these other friendships, well, if if these are the same people that are also doing the Sunday school, and they're also doing the music ministry, and they're also doing the outreach, and they're also doing the, whatever it is, because you have a very, very small church. Can you talk about that a little bit?
You pray for a bigger one. No, obviously, if that's the situation, then you don't have a lot of options. You are wearing a lot of hats. You do have a lot of responsibilities. But that's the nature of a small, growing church. That's the nature of a church that's just getting on its feet. You will probably have to do all of those things, and maybe even more. But you won't have to do them all forever. So if you can just kind of do those things while you have to. But I think anybody that's been involved in church ministry work, church planting work, they will tell you that God's going to bring people in. He's going to bring the right people in that have the gifts, that have the talent, that have the ability to work in specific areas. Obviously, one of the biggest needs is, children's ministries. Because no sooner do you have families coming into your church, but families have children, and then in some cases, teenagers. So all of a sudden you have... Now, if you don't have those ministries readily available, and I highly recommend that you do some research, and then you find other churches that do have active, involved, healthy, spirit-filled youth ministries, and try to plug them in. And plug them in while you can until somebody is brought into your local assembly that can undertake that responsibility. Same thing with the Sunday school program. If you don't have the staff, if you don't have the means, then you might have to kind of farm them out, so to speak. You might have to look to a sister church for assistance and some help, but you do whatever you have to do in that time frame until your church begins to grow. And I think that there could be a lot of people that would come in here and talk about their young, growing churches, and they would tell you that it's a challenge, to be sure. People are doing it. Maybe these people are just kind of holding the fort down temporarily. It's not what they really feel cut out to do, but they're going to do it, and they'll do it willingly. But then, in time, God's going to bring in those people, and they're going to take that responsibility on so that you won't have to be doing something that you're not really called to do, equipped to do, or maybe even have the patience to do. But in the meantime, you're going to get it done to the best of your ability. So you just really do pray that, God, I'm sure that if that's the case, everybody's on their knees in that local church praying, God, please bring people into this church. Bring people in that have a desire and sense the need to minister to young people, whether they're children or teenagers. Anyone else? Question, comment? Yes. Oh, we got to pass this to you. You got it? Okay. So that's going to be the policy. If someone else has a comment after Tom's done, then he has to bring the microphone to you. Go ahead.
You said learn to confront people. I guess in regards to other youth leaders, if you're not the head of the youth ministry,
yeah.
Is it your place to confront another youth leader, and if it is, how do you know if you're the one who should? I guess.
I think that if you have a friendship and a healthy friendship with that other youth leader, that you would take the same approach that the leader of that youth ministry would take towards them, which I think would be a very gracious approach, a very kind approach. Confirm and affirm your love for them and your appreciation for all that they do, and then you can address the issue. It's not something that has to be long, drawn out, or dramatic, but something that maybe can be communicated very quickly, very simply, but yet very effectively. Now, if you have a good, healthy relationship with that person that's co-laboring with you, then of course you could approach them, because they would respect you already, and they would receive from you, perhaps. But if you sense that they might not, maybe because you're a year or two younger, or maybe there's a little familiarity between the two of you, then you would go to the person in charge of that youth ministry, preferably the one who's leading it, who has the responsibility to oversee it. Let him know, and then he can decide whether he's going to confront that person or he's going to delegate it to someone else to confront them. So, it could go either way, depends upon the stability of the relationship that you have with that person. Ava?
So, like, let's say someone is in youth ministry and you would like to minister to, like, if it's a girl, to girls, but you, you know, sometimes, like, you want to earn trust and, like, that they could share. But what is the balance between, like, going into their private life and, because sometimes I felt like they told me something and they were like, they wanted to tell me before, but I don't want to, like, hunt in their private life. Mm-hmm. So how can you, like, or you just personally look for the balance in that?
Yeah, I think you have to. I think if a young person gets to know you and they spend time with you and you're making that investment, they probably feel as though that you've earned their trust. And when a young person feels like you've earned their trust, then they will approach you, and they would probably open up and share some things with you. The question that I would have is what the nature of it is that they're sharing, because sometimes we're shocked at what some young people might share with us, and we're left asking ourselves a question like, do I need to talk to their parents? Do I need to talk to the pastor of the church? Do I need to talk to the authorities? Do I need to talk to the police? Because the nature of some of the things that they tell us is it can be that great, can be that alarming. So, we have to kind of prepare ourselves to hear everything from A to Z, the good, bad, and the ugly. And it might not be too good, some of it that we're going to hear. And then we have to ask ourselves, and then it's good for us to chronicle it as well, Recently, something was brought to my attention, and I have to kind of follow up on it, and I have to find out something that happened a lot of years ago, but still on my watch, and I want to do it. I want to do it decently. I want to do it orderly, but I want to do it the right way. And I think that if we've learned anything, let's use this as an example. If we've learned anything from what's happened at Penn State University and at Syracuse University, is that if you know something, you'd better act on it. You'd better act on it. Because if you don't, you could be complicit. You could be in trouble yourself. So if you feel as though the nature of what a young person confides in you about warrants you to telling somebody who is over you in a delegated fashion, then please do so. Do so. Don't think about it for 5 years and then say, I probably should have said something. You go ahead and you talk to them. But I think yours is not along those lines. Yours is more like they're opening. Yeah, that's great. I think they're sensing that there's a relationship that is based upon trust. And whenever there's a relationship based upon trust, don't be surprised if people, again, risk opening up more of themselves and revealing, some of the things that might be on their heart. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to give you this. This really just kind of lets you know what you can expect to find on my portion of the final exam. It's going to really come down to just 5 questions on your final exam. And I think that everything that I cover in this you have in your notes. So I don't know that you're going to be able to use your notes during your final exam. So I want to encourage you to study, to be prepared. And again, the questions are here, so you'll know what the questions are as of tonight. So I can't imagine that any of you would fail the exam. If you do fail the exam, then I think it's safe to say you are a failure. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. Even if you failed the exam, you're not a failure. Just know that. But if you do fail the exam, I would have to wonder about you a little bit. Okay? But that's not going to happen. You're all going to ace it. Thanks so much for being a great group of students. I hope we've learned something. I know we didn't have a lot of time together. I think it's very difficult when you're trying to teach 3 aspects of ministry in one class. We used to teach youth ministry as a course all semester long years ago, but we don't any longer. We're just kind of trying to squeeze it in a little bit here and a little bit there. So hopefully it will be helpful. And I hope and pray, to be honest with you, that some of you do end up going into full-time youth ministry work. because God knows young people today need you. And it's a battle for their lives, and I can only hope and pray that somebody in this room is ready to take my spot. Okay? Father, thank you for our students. Bless them as they prepare for their final exam. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, I'm going to give you this, and then you are free to take a break. You probably won't assemble back in here again until about 7:10, I'm guessing, okay, for your next instructor. I'm not sure who that is, either Pastor Cooper or Pastor Arto.